Hi besties, welcome back to my channel. Let me tell you, it has been a week. I had the most fun start to the month of May. I had a family wedding and it was my boyfriend's birthday and there was so much partying, so much so that I spent the whole week sick. So I'm a bit late with my wrap up, but it's here and I'm very excited to give it to you because I had 2 5-star reads this month. And I'm just excited to talk about all the books I read because it was a really strong reading month for me. I thought I'd try something new and I'm going to go through the books I read from lowest rated to highest rated. So yeah, let's get started. So my first book is A Dance of Lies by Brittney and this was a debut fantasy novel. It was unlike anything I've read before. Our main character is Vasily and she is a dancer and she's been imprisoned for 2 years but is then taken out of a very cruel, horrible prison and is summoned by the king essentially, and the king has a job for her. He wants her to basically become a spy for her, and if she does this he tells her that she can have her freedom. The problem is that she's a dancer and to be this spy she needs to dance, and she's lost so much of her physical strength and dancing ability because she's been tortured and in prison. So there's a big focus on resilience, which was one of my favourite things about this book, and how she sort of overcomes those challenges and works hard and learns to live a life with the new difficulties she's got and how she overcomes things. And it's not necessarily even just through hard work, it's through like thinking of different solutions to problems. It's very cool, I really like it. But this is a romantasy novel. I did really enjoy the romance. I think it was nice how it didn't dominate the plot, it was just kind of like sprinkled in there. However, I do think we didn't need to see more of the romance, but I think we need to see more of our love interest in order for me to feel more invested in it. I don't think I felt invested in it enough. I don't know, like I just felt like I wanted more, but it wasn't necessarily more of the romance I wanted. I just wanted to like be more interested in the love interest. It did feel like there were a few holes in the plot and I was enjoying it when I was reading it, but I wasn't desperate to pick it up when I wasn't really thinking about it, and like I haven't thought about it since I finished it. It was a good time when I was reading it, but like I'm not super invested. One thing I did really like in this book was the villains, and I did enjoy the world building as well. I think they're both very well done and they're probably my 2 favourite things about this book. The world building was like very minimal but still immersive, which I think in a short fantasy novel, that is great, that's exactly what you want. And the villains were mean and they were cool, and obviously I didn't like them, but I liked how much I disliked them. I think this is a strong debut novel and I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. Okay, so next up we have A Showgirls Rules for Falling in Love by Alice Murphy. This is another book I read via NetGalley, so thank you so much for letting me have access to this book. It was a great read. This book basically follows a dual timeline. So we have a historian researching the main plot and telling us what happened, and then we have like we're reading her research, so we're seeing what was unfolding at the time, which is the bulk of the storyline. That part, like the actual history part, set in the 1920s, where we're following a like stage performer, Evelyn Cross, who is just this bold, amazing, vibrant character. I really enjoyed following her story. I don't think we needed to read it through the eyes of the historian, but I do get why the author tried to do that. I think it did add another element, and I think it showed how past intertwines with the present and how history can bring so much value to us in the present. But I don't know, I didn't feel very connected to the historian and her storyline like I did the characters in the 1920s. So I get why the author did it essentially, but for me I don't think this story needed that. This book is such a fun time. It's all about like glitz, partying, showgirl life, but at the same time it is very much about self-acceptance, and there's such a strong theme of friendship and supporting your friends when times are tough and accepting your friends when they don't accept themselves, and just that, I don't know, it just had this really, really lovely message to it, and I've really enjoyed that part of this book. And I just think it shows the value in being unapologetically yourself and embracing who you are. Yeah, this book was a really, really fun time. I gave it 3.75 stars. Next up we have The Right Move by Liz Tomforde. This is the second book in the Windy City series and it is so hyped up. I was excited to read it, but I was also a bit like, I hope it lives up to the hype. And let me tell you, it did. It was such a fun romance read. We follow Indy, who after a nasty breakup moves in with her best friend's brother, who doesn't really want her there, but sort of has to because he loves his sister and he wants to help his sister, and his sister wants him to help his friend. So we get this like forced proximity relationship of not quite enemies, but definitely not friends. And I kind of feel like it is a bit of an enemies to lovers. And it's sports romance. Like, this book just has like all of the tropes rolled into one. Grumpy cross sunshine, it's all just there. So I feel like that's why this romance is so popular, because it does all so well. It's also got a fake relationship trope, which, if you've been following for a while, you know I'm not overly keen on, because it just doesn't feel believable. However, it did in this scenario, and I did feel invested in their fake relationship, and it was so cute watching it go from fake relationship to real relationship. It was just like so giggly and heartwarming. Both of our main characters have experienced relationship trauma, and this book was very much about how they healed through their relationship with each other, and it was just lovely. And I think this added another dimension to the storyline, which was just really good. One thing I will say is that I found the male love interest quite frustrating at the start of the book, and I was a bit like, you're rude. And I don't know, rudeness is just like the most like least attractive thing in the world to me. So I was a bit worried that he wasn't going to be redeemable, but of course he was redeemed. I'm in love. More than anything else, this book screams, if he wanted to, he would. And I just think that's why this book is so popular. I think that's why we all love it so much. I gave this book 4 stars. Next up, we have a non-fiction book, a memoir by Chris Broad, which is called Abroad in Japan, and this is about his 10 years living in Japan so far. It was a really interesting read, and it really highlighted the struggles that it faced, but also celebrated the wins so much. I can't believe like how brave he was. He moved to like a remote rural part of Japan where they didn't really speak any English, and just embraced life there and learnt Japanese, and he wasn't a teacher and yet he became one, and yeah, he just embraced life fully, and I think it showed how rewarding living outside your comfort zone can be. It's very much a story about perseverance and hard work, but equally about how success isn't achieved by just following a linear path, and how by being curious, following your passions, you will get to an amazing, great place. The one part of this book that I really, really connected with was the description of an earthquake. I experienced an earthquake earlier this year, and I just found it so hard to put into words what that experience felt like. And the way Chris Broad does that in this book, I was like, yes, that is it. That is exactly how it feels. That is exactly the thoughts I had afterwards. It was just so well written, and I just felt so connected to him when I read that part of the book. This book has definitely made me want to visit Japan more. Like, it's been on my bucket list for a while now, but the way Chris describes it just makes it like, I don't know, it just looks so fun. I really want to go. I learned so much about Japanese culture that I didn't know through reading this book as well, and I think if you do want to learn more about Japan, this is definitely a great starting place. I gave this book 4 stars, and it was a really great read. I think it would work really well as an audiobook. I did read it as a physical book. But yeah, I think it would work really well as an audiobook as well. I don't know if there's one where Chris Broad reads it himself, because I think that would be really cool. Anyway, let's move on. Our next book is something different to what I usually read. It's A Training School for Elephants by Sophy Roberts. Again, something I read via NetGalley, so thank you so much to the publishers for letting me have early access to this book. And wow, this book really did challenge me, both emotionally and intellectually. I was a bit lost at times, I can't lie. I did get a bit confused because there was just so much information, but I think that's because of my own lack of knowledge on the topic. However, I will say I could pick it up and I still really enjoyed reading it, but I did have to really concentrate. But again, that's probably just because it was me reading it. This book basically talks about King Leopold, who wanted to set up a training school for elephants in Africa to train African elephants in the same way elephants were trained in India. And they basically brought some elephants over from India, and they went on this massive journey across Africa to try and set up this training school. And it was basically documenting that expedition and how that went. It's very interesting, it's very sad, and I think Sophy Roberts basically goes and redoes this journey, and she talks about the historical journey and her own journey, both of which highlights the impacts of colonialism and how this has affected the land and the people that live there and the animals, and just all of it is very, very sad, but very, very important to talk about these things. Yeah, it was an incredibly interesting read and something very outside of my comfort zone for reading, just because of how challenging it was. But I really enjoyed it and definitely recommend it. I do want to add that I think this story was even more compelling because Sophie Roberts was so curious and passionate. Like, that came across so well in the writing of this book, and that made me more invested and more curious about what was going on. She really documented small details well. So if she's had a conversation with locals, she will literally document that conversation, and it just made you feel like you were on the journey with her. It was very well written. I gave this book 4 stars. Okay, so next up we have the wonderful Yellowface. This sat on my TBR for too long, and I'm so glad I finally got round to it. If you don't know what this book is about, it follows 2 writers. We've got June and Athena, and they are best friends-ish. They're friends from college, and they both are aspiring writers. Athena goes on to be this incredibly successful writer, and June is still trying to break into the industry. But they stay in touch and they are friends, and that's sort of where we enter the story. They go out and have a nice evening together, and then Athena dies, and June steals her manuscript for her next book and publishes it as her own work. And this book basically just unpicks all of that. Now, this is the first time I have read a book where I have hated the main character with a passion. I did not like them, I was not rooting for them, I just felt like about June, and yet I could not put this book down. I literally read it from start to finish. It was so compelling, interesting. It was such a page turner. I wanted to know what was going to happen, while equally just feeling such hate for the main character, but not even understanding, but seeing how she is justifying her decisions, and then at points being screaming at her, but equally being I can see how you're tenuously making that link. I don't know, I can't even explain it. It was just so different to anything else I'd ever read before. I also think it gave you an insight into the publishing world, and obviously it is a satire novel about the publishing industry, but it was, I don't know, there was some fun points to think about. Alongside exploring plagiarism, which is the main theme I think of this book, it does also explore who can write what, because June is writing a book about Asian history because Athena had a Chinese background, and June sort of then publishes this book under a new ambiguous name, and it's all just very off, and it really does open up the debate about who can write what. The other thing that I think R.F.Kuang wanted to comment on when writing this book is loneliness and what loneliness can do for a person, because I think June essentially was very lonely, and I think that's why she became the way she was. And who knows who should have been if she'd have had more success from her parents or had supportive people in her life. Yeah, it was a very interesting read, a compelling page turner. One other thing that I did think was really clever about this book is it's all told from June's point of view, but because of the kind of person June is, we know we can't trust her opinion. So I think you also, you get certain bits of information at certain points, and you find out more as the story unravels, and you just feel like you can't trust the book that you're reading almost, because you're well, you're a liar, June, I don't trust you. Yeah, it was just very clever. R.F.Kuang is so clever. Her writing is amazing. I love her. I'm so excited for Catabasis in August, only a few months to go. I gave this book a 4.5 stars. What an interesting concept for a book. Definitely recommend this one. Next up, we have a book that has sat on my TBR for even longer than Yellowface, A Curse for True Love. Now, I really enjoyed this, but I do feel kind of sad because I think I left it too long between reading the first 2 books and then reading this one. I did read summaries of the first 2 to remind myself of what happened, but I definitely felt less immersed in the world because I'd left it so long. I kept having to be oh yeah, that, I remember that happened, and then looking things up. So that took me out of the story a little bit. However, it was such a fun time. I just love Stephanie Garber's writing. I think she has such a whimsical and cozy way of writing fantasy that still feels like you don't know what's going to happen. I just loved it. It was really good. I think the world that Stephanie Garber writes in is just so unique, and I think it doesn't feel like any other fantasy. It just feels so whimsical and almost like Alice in Wonderland-y, but romantic and fun. I just love it. It's so nice. I've also tabbed this page, and I think it was because I just love the quote so much, so I'm going to read it to you. I know my faith in love might appear foolish. I know that it might not be enough, but I'm not doing this because I believe I'll win. I'm actually a little afraid I'm going to lose. I no longer think love is a guarantee of victory or a happily ever after, but I think it's a reason to fight for those things. I know my attempt to save could end in a fiery explosion, I'd rather go up in flames with him than watch while he burns. I'm not crying, you are. Honestly, that quote, when I read it and I was like just reading the book and I was so immersed, I literally was crying. It's just so beautiful. I want to reread it again now. I gave this a 4.5 stars again. It was such a good read. I do think it could have been a 5-star read had I have not left it so long in between reading the first and second and then this book. Oh well, it was still a great time. Next up, we have probably one of my most anticipated reads of 2025. Sunrise on the Reaping, the fifth book in the world of the Hunger Games. It is another prequel, this time following the story of Haymitch. Haymitch is one of my favourite characters from the Hunger Games, probably my second favourite character. My favourite is Effie. So I was just so excited about this book and finally getting to hear his story. The book itself did not disappoint. It was so good. The story was so interesting. It was so great that like characters we knew from the original Hunger Games trilogy, we got to see them in a different light. And it was so great to see how that connected to what happened 25 years later. However, this book is sad. Obviously, we know where Haymitch is at in 25 years' time in the story of the first 3 Hunger Games books. But finding out how he got there and what happened to him from District 12 and seeing his Hunger Games is just sad, and it broke my heart a little bit. It made me love Haymitch even more. I think even if you haven't read the first 3 Hunger Games books, but you've watched the films, you could definitely jump in and read this. It's so good. It's so interesting to see that world 25 years earlier. And I just love this world, and it just felt so like wholesome going back and entering it again. I loved the Hunger Games when I was a teenager, so just being able to go back in time and read it again is just so nice. Like, please write more Hunger Games books, Suzanne Collins. I'd love to see like where the world is at now, like not now obviously because there's no real sense of time, but like where it's gone in the future, maybe like 25 years post the Hunger Games. I know what I'm trying to say, but I don't think I'm saying it very well. I just wish things were different. This book does what it does so well, but I just wish the outcome wasn't so sad. Definitely recommend it though. 4.5 stars. Next up, we have the audiobook that I was listening to throughout April, and it is Friends, Lovers and the Big Terrible Thing by Matthew Perry. And he obviously wrote this book before his death, and then I think it was out for about a year before he died. And now listening to it, knowing he isn't alive anymore, just adds a whole new layer of sadness to his life and what he endured. And I think it shows how horrible addiction is and how fame isn't everything and money can't solve all your problems. In fact, it can actually enhance them sometimes because it may give you easier access to things that would be harder to get. It's again a very sad read. Spent a lot of time being sad this month whilst reading, but very worth it. And I think it just sheds such an important light on a topic that can be a bit taboo and can be a bit judgmental. I think people don't see addiction as an illness all of the time, and I think when you listen or read this book, you can't stand up and argue that addiction isn't an illness. It's such an important topic, and I think we've got a lot to learn about how we treat people with addiction, and Matthew Perry makes that very clear. I gave this book 5 stars. I just think anyone that is willing to be that open about their life, their experiences, and like their vulnerabilities. He's not had an easy life, and it can't have been easy for him to write all of this down, let alone then record it talking himself about some of the things he's done to others and some of the things that have happened to him. I just think it's such a brave, courageous thing to do, and yeah, outstanding. That means we have one more book to review, and that is In Memoriam by Alice Winn. Again, this is one that has sat on my TBR for a while. I've seen so many amazing things on Instagram and Bookstagram and Booktube all about this book, and I've been wanting to read it for a while, but I haven't. And now I have, and it was a really, really, really great book. I'm so glad I finally got round to it. It was definitely my favourite read of the month. It is a historical fiction novel set in World War I, and you have two main characters, and they are both children or teenagers at a private school in England when the war breaks out. They are both underage, but one of them joins up to the military, which then causes the other one to join. One thing I will say about this book is that it highlights the brutality of World War I so much. I think particularly my own reading has very much focused on World War II when I've read historical fiction. So I knew about World War I, but not to the extent of some of the stuff that happened. And yeah, it literally rips your heart out. These two characters, I missed out a massive part of the plot a moment ago. They are in love with each other, but they don't know they're in love with each other. They don't know the other one is in love with them back, and it's a friendship, but both of them want more than a friendship, and it basically shows how that unravels in a time where homosexuality was illegal. So obviously this book was heartbreaking. From everything I've just said, you can tell that this book is just gonna like rip your heart out, stomp on it, and not stop the entire book. But it's also beautiful. Like, the way it's written is just amazing. And one thing, and I think this is why it's done so well critically, is it references a lot of ancient Greek poetry and different poetry throughout time, I guess. I'm trying to remember now. My knowledge of poetry is very limited, but it references that throughout. It's just so clever. Clearly so much research went into this book. It is so well done. The writing is beautiful. This book is a clear 5-star read to me. Alice Winn, absolutely outstanding. Whatever she writes next, I will be reading. I wonder if she's got another book out. Let's look that up before we end the video. I wonder if there's one like announced, because I will read it. It was so good. She's got nothing else out yet, and it doesn't look like there's anything else due to be done. Let's follow her on Goodreads. She didn't learn to read or write until she was 9 years old. That's a bit of inspiration for you. If Alice Winn can learn to read and write at 9, you can write a book too. I can write a book too. We can all write books if we want to. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to like and subscribe. What a great reading month that was. So many reads there. If you've read any of them and you liked them, please comment below. Or if you've got a recommendation for me that you think I'll like based on those books, comment that too. Happy reading, everybody.